Almost there. We are live.
Awesome. Thank you, Sasha. Good morning, everyone. I am the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, better known as MAPC's president, Erin Wortman, and I want to formally / not so formally welcome you all this morning to our winter council meeting. We have such a great agenda today, so I'm going to keep my remarks super short. I am so thrilled that we have gathered together for some business, but also to celebrate some great staff accomplishments and hear what I imagine will be very inspiring and insightful comments and thoughts from our newly elected mayors in the MAPC region. So with that, I am going to call on General Counsel Margie, who will call the roll, and she will only be calling those individuals who have not been checked off as present. So with Zoom meetings, what we do is we check you in as you come in, very much like we do in person. And so there's no need to call everyone's name here. So Margie, take it away.
Thank you. Apologies at the very beginning if I mispronounce a name. You're welcome to mispronounce mine anytime. We're going to start with Ashland, Yolanda Greaves. Bedford Alternative, Margot Fleischman. Bellingham, Jim Kupfer. Beverly, Michael Cahill. Bolton, Erica Urati. Foxborough, Les Fox. Foxborough Alternative, Cindy Markowitz. Burlington, Michael Espejo. Burlington Alt, Melissa Tintocalis. Cambridge, Jeff Roberts. Cambridge Alt, Bill Deenan. Carlisle, Kate Reed. Chelsea, John DePriest. Cohasset, Lauren Lind. Dedham Alt, Jeremy Rosenberger. I'm sorry, Dedham, Jeremy Rosenberger. Dedham Alt, John Sisson. Dover, Christopher Dwelly. Dover Alt, John Jeffries. Duxbury, Kristen Rapp. Duxbury Alt, George Wadsworth. Essex, Peter Phippen. Everett, Tony Sousa. Foxborough, Paige Duncan. Foxborough Alt, William Keegan. Framingham, Susan Nickel. Franklin, Amy Love. Gloucester, Greg Verga. Gloucester Alt, I apologize, we can move on from there. Elaine Lazarus from Hopkinton Alt. Christina Johnson Hudson. Hull, Chris Delorio. Ipswich, Carolyn Britt. Ipswich Alt, William Pollitz. Lexington, Richard Canal. Linfield, Robert Dolan. Linfield Alt, Emily Kadamatori. Malden, Deborah Burke. Manchester, Christine Delicio. Maynard, Chris De Silva. Norfolk, Richard McCarthy. Norwell, Bruce Graham. Rockland, Jennifer Constable. Saugus, Jeanette Fasano, Sharon, Susan Price, Sherborne, George Proakis, Stoughton Alt, John Charbonneau, that was Stoughton Alt, Pamela McCarthy. Stowe, Jesse Stedman. Stowe Alt, Ellen Sturgis. Sudbury Alt, Beth Sudemeyer. Topsfield, Kevin Haratunian. Topsfield Alt, Donna Rich. Waltham, Catherine Cagle. Weston, Imai. Weymouth, Robert Headland. Weymouth Alt, Carl Edsel. Wilmington, Valerie Gingrich. Winchester Alt, Diab Jerusis. Rentham, Rachel Benson. Rentham Alt, Kevin Sweet. I will read the gubernatorials. Sharonda Almeida. Sol Carbonell. Kelly Chun, Robert Cohen. Jared Johnson. Richard Pila. Romani Serpata. Kelly Strong. Ex officios. Sean Canty. Courtney Rainey. Catherine Catt. David Moeller. And that we have made quorum. So to go forward from here, we do have quorum, Erin, that we would be able to open a public meeting. Before we do so, as many of you know, Heidi Anderson, our beloved Heidi Anderson here at MAPC, has been ill and unable to join us for a while now. It is also her birthday today. So in recognition of our good thoughts, well wishes, and loving hopes for Heidi, I'm going to ask just to take a moment, if people could wave, if you want to unmute and say something to Heidi. I will bring this recording to her, and I guarantee it'll give her a big smile.
Happy birthday, Heidi.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Heidi.
birthday, Heidi.
Happy birthday, Heidi.
Happy birthday, Heidi.
Love
Happy
you.
birthday.
Birthday,
Happy
Heidi.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Heidi.
Thank you. That's going to give her a huge smile. And you have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you, Margie, for that. And thank you all for signing in early. I am thrilled that we have quorum and we can get this business portion going. So with that, I just want to introduce really quick the remote meeting, which obviously we're all on now. But as you may note on the top left side of your screen, you notice that we are recording and we're also live on YouTube. And the recording of this will live in that space moving forward after the meeting's done. This open meeting of the MAPC Council is being conducted remotely, consistent with Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, which includes an extension until July 15th, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely, which we're all doing. The public may view the proceedings live streamed at youtube.com/user/MAPC Metro Boston. And obviously for this meeting, we're convening the video conference via Zoom. And we all, council members, received our credentials before the meeting. So with that, if you have not already done so, have already done so, specifically for those council members, if you could put your full name and affiliation. So underneath is myself is Erin Wortman. I represent the town of Stoneham. And then like Steve Silvera would say Steve Silvera, comma, gubernatorial, as he's a gubernatorial appointment. I hope you don't mind that I used you as an example, Steve. Again, this meeting is being recorded, and the recording of this meeting and the caucus that we will have will be posted to the MAPC website as soon as we are able to. So here are some ground rules really quick. We're all adults here, but I think it's nice to have a nice refresher. We're now going to turn to the first item on the business agenda. I appreciate you all permitting me the opportunity to cover a few ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. If you are on the phone or computer, you should be muted unless you are asked to speak. And we'll be utilizing the Zoom chat feature for all motions, seconds, and voting. Please use the raise your hand function if you wish to be recognized, AKA if you have a question, and I will recognize you. If you have any difficulties, please identify the problem in the chat feature and an MAPC staff member will assist you. And those council members calling in by phone will be asked by our technical support staff team to identify themselves. So they are working on that, so every vote counts. So thank you again for your patience in that. I really appreciate it. And I will do my best to keep us moving, keep us on track, and get us going. So next up on the agenda, I'm going to call MAPC Treasurer Sam Seidel to talk about the adoption of the mid-year FY 2022 budget and the approval of the FY 2023 MAPC assessment. Sam?
Thank you, President Aaron. And one of your tasks is to make sure I don't give too much talking because sometimes I do that. So we know that. Welcome to you all. I'm Sam Seidel, the treasurer of MAPC. And today's treasurer's report involves two things. One, the first one we'll take up is the mid-year budget review, which is something we do every year. It looks at the budget as we are basically halfway through the year. It trues it up to help us have a nice soft landing at the end of the fiscal year. That's item number one. And then item number two is to look at and hopefully approve the MAPC FY 2023 assessment. So we're looking for approval, adoption votes on both of those. But we're going to start with the mid-year budget. As I say, it's something we do every year. And it's our opportunity to go back into the budget, look at where we are about halfway through the year, true up the numbers because we've gone halfway through the year, and just make sure we're on target for where we're trying to get to on June 30th. And that's what you have in front of you in a summary sheet right here, which has the basic summary numbers on it. I will do a quick walkthrough and then I'll hand it back to Aaron, hopefully for a motion of approval, adoption or approval. So we're going to do a basic run through. First, we're going to look at the revenue side of the numbers. Then we'll look at the expenditure side, and then I'll give you my big sort of takeaways. The biggest takeaway to start with is that the finances of the agency are strong. As per usual, MAPC does a very good job of being very conservative in their budgeting, not counting any revenues that don't have a high likelihood of arriving. And this is true this year again. I'll just make a couple of notes on the revenue side. You'll see that total revenue is actually down on that far right column, but that's because that's pass-through money. That's money that comes in the door and then goes right back out the door. And on some of the state programs that are represented by that number, it's just taken longer to get them up and running. So that money doesn't show up in this year's budget. But the actual money for internal operations that's available to MAPC is actually up slightly by a small amount. And that's good. That just means that the agency is in strong fiscal condition and that the revenues look good there. On the expenditure side, I'll just make the broad note that as you look across total indirect expenses, we're basically bang on accurate to where we thought we'd be in last May. Basically, as we got halfway through the year, we're looking at what we're going to expend, and our numbers there's a slight adjustment up, but it's very tiny given the size of the expenditure overall. And that means that the budget number we saw in May is actually where we're at in March. We're actually in March now. So that's a good thing. That means that we're doing well. Probably most important in all of these numbers is that we're also right on target for the overhead rate. The overhead rate gets approved every year. We work very hard to establish what it's going to be. It then gets approved. Once it's been approved, we have to work very hard to land right on that number, and we will land on that number by this mid-year budget. So that's a very good thing. As I say, the finances of the agency are strong. The budget is in balance. And this mid-year budget review and revision will take us through the end of the year in very good shape. And then we come back in May with the FY23 budget. Any comments, thoughts? And if I'm seeing none, I'll hand it back to President Aaron for a motion and a vote on adoption. This was reported out by the Executive Committee favorably with the recommendation for adoption by the full council in February.
Great. I see Mark has a comment. Mark?
Yes, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I wanted to not only thank Sam and the members of the Finance Committee, but also our finance team, particularly Sheila Winter-Downer, our Director of Finance. Sheila is actually leaving MAPC in April after having served here for about 12 years. She has done a fabulous job. A tremendous amount of the ability of the agency to do its work depends upon the solid finances that undergird MAPC. And Sheila deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge her and thank her for her efforts. Needless to say, the search for a new finance director to fill those big shoes is fully underway. We are already interviewing.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I was going to mention that the budget obviously doesn't come. I guess for us, those of us that aren't on the finance committee or work in the finance department at MAPC, it looks like it just kind of comes together, which I appreciate. But I know there's a lot of hands and capacity working very hard to make sure that we're stable, to make sure that we're growing, and make sure that our numbers reflect accuracy. So thank you all for that work. If there are no questions at this time, I am going to ask for a motion to adopt the mid-year FY22 budget. So what we're going to do is, if you'd like to make that motion or second and you're a council member or an alternate and your delegate is not here, you can do so right now in the chat. Josh Ostroff, I appreciate you. Okay, hold on, everyone. Okay, so I have Josh Ostroff from Natick motioned to adopt the FY22 mid-year budget, and Jenny Raitt of Arlington seconded that motion. I am not seeing any hands up, questions, comments, or concerns. So with that, we're going to move to the vote. First, we're going to start with the ayes, then the nays, and the abstentions. I know we are all in good practice because everyone has already started voting. So just drop your vote in the chat. First, the ayes. Oh, I got to vote too. Great. And any nays and abstentions? Great, thank you all. I am seeing one abstention, but as far as my eyeball can see with quorum, motion passes, the vote carries. So we have now adopted the FY22 mid-year budget. Thank you so much, everyone, for that. Sam, let's take it away to the assessment and go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, President Aaron. And the next item on the agenda is the FY23 assessment. You have the sheet, I believe you received the sheet with the assessment numbers on them. This again is something we do every year. It includes a modest 2.5% increase, which is also something that we've done every year that I've been connected to MAPC. These assessment dollars are very flexible. And as you probably know, with the advent of COVID, MAPC has been asked to do more and more and more work. And the demands on the staff have just grown exponentially over that time. First, originally in the public health field, both working with individual communities but also regionally. And now in the economic recovery area, MAPC is being asked to do a lot. These assessment dollars are very flexible, some of the most flexible money available to the agency. And it means people can get to work right away on these projects before grant funding has been set up and established and state programs have gotten going. In that sense, they are very, very valuable to the agency. And last comment, this assessment, FY23 assessment, was reported out favorably by the executive committee with a recommendation for adoption by the full council. Any thoughts, comments, questions? If not, I'll hand it back to Erin for a vote.
Great. If you could raise your hand if you have a question, like not just visually, if you could do it on Zoom, I'd appreciate it because it pops up for me so I can see you. As we have 171 people in the room, so I want to make sure I get everyone. All right, Sandra, you are right ahead, but I need a motion first, please. Can I have a motion, seeing no questions, can I have a motion then to adopt, okay. Can I have a motion to approve the FY23 MAPC assessment? Oh boy. Everyone's going a little too fast for me, but I appreciate it. I see Frank moved the motion and Tom Daniel of Salem seconded the motion. Thank you so much for that. And at this time, I will ask for approving votes first. So all the ayes, get to work. You guys are so quick today. And if there are any nays, please enter that at this time. And then any abstentions. Oh, Paula, I see your question and I will have Mark Drayson, or I will get that answer for you, Paula of Lincoln. And I gave time for abstentions as well, but with that, the motion passes. Mark, would you mind answering Paula of Lincoln in the chat with her question? I'd appreciate that. And with that, the motion carries. So thank you so much, everyone. The FY 2023 MAPC assessment has carried. Sam, do you want to say anything?
No, just thanks everybody for their attention to that, and a personal thanks to Sheila, who has been the rock solid, steady for me as treasurer, and also the finance committee, Tabor Keeley and Yolanda Greaves, who have appreciated her work very much. So she will be missed by us for sure. That concludes the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Sam. And I obviously echo everything that's been said by Mark and Sam regarding Sheila and all her great work for the agency. And with that, we're going to go on to our next item. We have the approval of minutes from the annual council meeting from May 26, 2021, and the special council meeting from November 9th, 2021. So at this time, I'm going to ask if there are no questions. I'm going to ask for a single motion to approve the minutes from both meetings. Mo Handel of Needham made that motion. Thank you so much. And Frank again with the second on that. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes specifically? I'm not seeing any. So if everyone could, first we'll start with the ayes. Please enter that in the chat if you are a delegate. And then the nays, if there are any. And then any abstentions you have, please do so at this time. And with that, I will say that the motion carries. Both sets of minutes are approved with one abstention from Barbara of Medway. Thank you, everyone, for that. I really appreciate it. All right, next up, I'm going to call on the Executive Director, Mark Davidson, to deliver his report. Mark?
Good morning, everyone. Erin, thank you very much. And thanks to Sam. And thanks to everyone who worked behind the scenes in the preparation of the business items that you have just approved. We really appreciate it. I would note that we also particularly appreciate to our municipal colleagues the overwhelming vote to approve the assessment increase. I know that that is never an easy thing, but I think it's an appropriate thing and we thank you for it and we promise you that the funds will be well used. Since we moved to DocuSign in March or April of 2020, just 2 years ago, I now sign all of the agency's contracts through that technical portal. And a few days ago, I passed my 600th signature in that period of time. Every one of those signatures constitutes a project that we are doing with a city, a town, a group of communities, the Commonwealth, an allied organization. And is a testament to the strength and hard work of every member of our 100-person staff. That's six projects per staff person on average. And that's what your assessment dollars go to. It enables us to do that work competitively and promptly, and we appreciate it. I'm going to start with a few items that might seem a little bit down, but I'm going to promise you that I'm going to come up toward the end of my remarks. I struggled a little bit, honestly, with preparing this. I usually just talk through some of the great work we're doing and call it a day. But these are not usual times. They continue to be tough and difficult times. We're all super happy that, we see a lot of the mandates and restrictions that have come to characterize our lives being lifted. And hopefully as the sun rises a little higher in the sky and with God's help for those who believe in God, the numbers will continue to stay low or decline. We're looking forward to a better spring. At the same time, it's important to remember the crisis we've just been through. Between 2,000 and 3,000 people died in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts due to Omicron. And it's important to take lessons and learn from the way government and others responded or failed to respond in certain cases to that crisis, because it is possible that there will be variants again in the future. I was heartened by the comments that the president made yesterday about readiness with material and services. I'm heartened by many of our local leaders who have indicated, even as they have eliminated restrictions, that they will be on guard and consider restoring them when and if it's necessary. Saving lives has to be our number one priority. It is our number one priority at MAPC in our COVID work. And I think we all have to remember those folks and their families and redouble our efforts going forward, even as we enjoy what looks like it's going to be a positive and happy time coming forward. I also can't help but think of the crisis on the other side of the world. We have at MAPC one staff member, Andre Pilati, who is from Moldova, which is right next to the Ukraine, and whose wife comes from the Ukraine and whose family is suffering there right now. And I know that all of us are following the news and hoping and praying for a better outcome than we might normally expect in this circumstance. It is a good reminder to us of the freedoms that we enjoy in this country, and also a good reminder of the importance of unity among democratic countries throughout the world. And so our thoughts and our prayers are with our comrades in the Ukraine today. We have continued to do more and more work at MAPC, not only to address the pandemic, but most centrally now in our efforts to try and ensure a sustainable, equitable, and resilient recovery. And those words are chosen intentionally. They're not jargon. They're actually the meaning that we put behind all of our projects and all of our policy work. We don't want to just come back and have everybody driving their cars into the offices all the time. We want to come back and make sure that all of the steps we're taking to grow and improve the economy are sustainable. Sustainable from a smart growth perspective, sustainable from a climate perspective. We want to make sure that the region is more equitable a year from now than it was a year before COVID, because everything that happened in the course of the pandemic not only demonstrated to us the inequities already inherent in our society, but it made them worse. Those 2,500 people that I mentioned earlier, those who have passed in the last 3 months, those numbers were not equally proportioned on the basis of race or income or location. And we know that those challenges that we saw early in the pandemic continue later in the pandemic. And so all of our work on ARPA, still some of our work with CARES dollars, our upcoming efforts on the infrastructure bill, our technical support for cities and towns are all very much focused on trying to make sure that we use these once in a generation resources to address longstanding issues of equity and to try and put people on a firmer footing throughout the Massachusetts, throughout the metropolitan region. And then resilience. We know that we must be resilient to climate change while we work overtime to mitigate it and to do our fair share in Massachusetts, in fact, more than our fair share, to try and keep the world just a little bit cooler and prevent some of the onslaughts of climate change that we're seeing right now. The work that we're doing in the expenditure of $400,000 of CARES money to address economic recovery issues in our community is one example of these efforts. The work that Cami Peterson is doing, the head of our clean energy department, I don't know if she is on the phone or on the Zoom right now, as a member of the state Clean Heat Commission, to try and adopt new stretch codes and figure out ways to address not only new construction, but also renovation, to try and make our Commonwealth more climate resilient, is another example of this ongoing work. And as evidence of the importance that we place on arts and culture in Massachusetts, the work that our arts and culture department recently concluded with the city of Somerville to try and address the loss of artist space and preserve future space for arts and culture in that vibrant community is yet another example of the work we are doing to make the region more sustainable, more equitable, and more resilient for all of our residents, and most importantly, for our children. So that work continues. It can't continue without partnership with all of you. And I hope that you will maintain that partnership over time. And please continue to work with MAPC and most importantly with each other, because that is the other objective of MAPC, regional collaboration. By working together, we can accomplish so much more than we can as 101 individual cities and towns. Thank you, Erin, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for your words. Really appreciate it. Okay, and with that, we have a little, I'll say excitement happening now. We have a couple of vacancies on the executive committee on the City Caucus. So I'm going to call on members of the council that represent the cities or their alternates to meet in a caucus to elect executive committee members. City representatives will move to a breakout room while all other council members, like me, and members of the public will participate in an activity regarding the Metro Common 2050 regional plan. So if staff could, I don't want to say pull out, but could they lead everyone to the virtual caucus room at this time? I'd really appreciate it.
Thanks, Erin. I'm going to open the room. I believe I've got everyone who should be in this caucus, but if you do not receive an invitation to join the breakout room and would like to join the caucus, you can click on the breakout room button at the bottom of your screen and join the room. So I'm going to open it now. And those of you who did not receive an invitation, you do not need to go into that breakout room.
Great, thank you, Sasha. I always joke that we're living in the future, but I guess we're just living in the now, where we're just kind of adapting and making it work. And I gotta say, like, I don't want to say I didn't think this was possible. Of course, it's all possible. It's just, I never thought that we would have to adapt in this way. It's really pretty cool. So for those of us not in the caucus at this time, while that voting is happening, I'm going to call on Eric Hove to share some information about the upcoming launch and introduce At Home in Boston, which is an artistic film on one of the Metro Common action areas. So Eric?
Thanks, Erin. Good morning, council members and special guests. My name is Eric Hove, the Director of Strategic Initiatives. And last November, this council adopted Metro Common 2050 as our new long-range regional plan. It does provide a vision for the long-term sustainability and resilience of our region, and really seeks to provide the tools, the research, and the recommendations to help us achieve that vision. Like Erin said, we are planning for a public launch of the plan in the first week of May. It's going to be our first big in-person event, so we're very excited to actually see people in person at the event, so stay tuned for that. As part of Metro Common, we also commissioned artists to help tell the stories of the region, really putting a human face to the issues that we all work on a daily basis. And one of the artists produced a couple films for us, Mariana Loreto, just really beautiful films that really help tell the stories about the people that live and work here. And that's what we're going to show in just a quick moment. But the last thing I wanted to plug was we are also going out and visiting cities and towns, doing what we're calling Metro Common to You presentations. So we visited Medway, the subregion Trick, heading to Cambridge Community Development staff next week. So I'd love to come out to your community. We're meeting with select boards, planning boards, city and town councils. So if you'd like me to come out and have a conversation with you and your committees, please email me. I'll drop my email in the chat, but we'd love to come out and have a conversation about the plan and how we can work together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to a quick film, and then we'll come back after the caucus. Thanks.
Greater Boston is growing both in jobs and population.
While these changes have helped our economy and our communities, we haven't added the homes these workers and residents need.
The housing shortage means housing costs are so high that many people can't afford to live here. Many residents have to make difficult choices between rent and other basic needs like medicine and food.
目前想在波士顿找住房是非常困难的，很难找，而且租金又贵，这样别无选择，只能到远离波士顿的郊区，那里能负担得起的地方来租住。 这样很远，远离了家庭、社交、网络服务和工作，给日常生活造成非常大的困扰。
Displacement, overcrowding, and homelessness are on the rise. Residents who have been historically excluded from certain housing markets and neighborhoods, especially people of color and those with lower incomes, face an unfair risk of displacement from their homes and communities.
Et le risque augmente maintenant pour les ménages à revenus modérés et moyens qui ont aussi beaucoup de mal à se loger dans plusieurs de ces mêmes quartiers. Au cours de la dernière décennie, par exemple, il y a eu une augmentation de 27% du nombre de familles sans abri dans le Grand Boston.
Entonces, ¿por qué no creamos más hogares para la gente? Hay un número limitado de terrenos sin desarrollar en la región, y en muchas ciudades y pueblos se impide el uso de terrenos para el desarrollo multifamiliar y otras alternativas a las viviendas unifamiliares.
В результате того, как устроено местное зонирование, период застройки затягивается и зачастую становится неопределенно длинным. В результате многие проекты не могут быть закончены и вынуждены быть замороженными.
Ces caractéristiques rendent le logement coûteux à développer, à acheter ou même à louer. Et peu d'endroits, en fait, nécessitent des aménagements pour inclure des logements abordables pour ces ménages à revenus faibles ou moyens.
We need change so everyone has the opportunity to live and contribute to vibrant neighborhoods.
سيتمكن الناس من العيش بالقرب من أماكن عليهم عندما يتناسب دخلهم مع إيجارات المنازل في نفس المنطقة.
As pessoas fazem menos viagens de veículos quando moram perto de lojas, empregos e parques, reduzindo as emissões que contribuem para as mudanças climáticas.
La gente pasa menos tiempo viajando entre sus casas y el trabajo, lo que les permite pasar más tiempo en su comunidad.
We dream of a greater Boston where no one is steered toward or away from any community because of their income, race, ethnicity, faith, or ability.
We dream of a greater Boston where all residents have homes that meet their needs and that they can afford, in places where they're connected to jobs, services, transit, and other opportunities that offer a safe and healthy life.
Help us make Boston a thriving home for everyone.
I am home.
I am home.
Je suis chez moi.
Estoy en casa.
I am home.
In Cambridge.
In Braintree.
In Natick.
À Norwood.
In Quincy.
In Somerville.
In Milford.
In Mountain.
In Lexington.
À Beverly.
In Dorchester.
In Stoneham.
Framingham.
In Roxbury.
In Hanover.
I am home in Boston.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Eric. I don't know if you want to say a few words for those of us who have seen that before. I love watching it every single time. What a great short film. Eric, I don't know if you want to. Okay.
No, I'll let the film speak for itself, but thank you.
Yeah. It was very well made. Thank you so much. And I'm seeing in the chat that people are sharing that sentiment as well. And please continue to share your thoughts on that film and its beauty. So I hear that we have an outcome to the City Caucus. So if it's okay, I'm going to call on Lizzie, I think, right? Yep, I'm going to call on Lizzie to give us the results. Lizzie?
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate it. We had a very speedy City Caucus, and we have two new members of our executive committee filling the vacancies, and that is Kurt Ballantyne from Peabody and George Proakis from Somerville. Thank you so much, everyone in the City Caucus. Really appreciate it.
Congratulations, Kurt. Congratulations, George. I am thrilled to have you on the council, on the executive committee, and I look forward to your contributions. And I thank everyone who participated in the voting and the speediness of making a decision. I appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to call on Executive Director Mark again to present the Davidson Staff Achievement Awards. So Mark, take it away. I'll say it, you're on mute, Mark.
Yep, no, I know. Thank you very much. This is one of my favorite times of the year. We are presenting the Davidson Award, which is named after one of our first executive directors, Bob Davidson, to 3 magnificent staff people today. Amy Riley, the Assistant Director of Municipal Collaboration, Raul Gonzalez, Senior Planner in the Economic Development Division, and Patrice Faulkner, our Operations Coordinator, who works with me on a daily basis and does a tremendous amount to keep the organization going. The first thing I'm going to do, however, is change my view.
Okay. All right, well, we'll take a quick pause here so Mark can get back on Zoom, if that's okay with everyone. I am thrilled that we're doing this. This is honestly, I'll just, while I have the floor, I'll kind of share my thoughts on this. I feel that the agency does so much good work and so many amazing things. And I think what makes this award really special is that other staff members, like colleagues, nominate each other for this award. And every year there are so many, so many nominations and suggestions. And Lizzie, are you here? And maybe Lizzie was involved for the first time this year as someone who had the ability to review those nominations, and how special. Lizzie, are you?
I am here, okay. Yes, thank you. Yes, as Erin said, this was the first time I had the opportunity as the deputy to actually review all the nominations that came in for the Davidson Award. It was an unbelievably overwhelming process because my colleagues had the most amazing things to say about these 3 people. And it was an absolute delight to read what my colleagues had to say about the incredible work that Amy and Raul and Patrice have done to contribute to the agency. I think in particular, I can call out some highlights. The work that Amy has done dedicating herself to MAPC for so many years, but actually putting the agency on stronger footing with our municipal collaboration work, with the incredible work that's a lot of the bread and butter aspects of the work that we do as an agency serving the 101 cities and towns of metropolitan Boston. And really kind of creating those strong connections and municipal ties that make people, see us as a trusted source in the region for the work that we get to do with our cities and towns. And then, I will also just say, Amy, it was very moving because it was your entire team who actually wrote in to nominate you for this award in a very unanimous and lovely set of words. I can tell I'm making you a little emotional, so I'll stop. And then, it's unusual that we have an opportunity to actually give out more than one Davidson Award. We did skip during the pandemic. And I'll note, maybe we shouldn't have, because actually everyone at the agency really deserved an award for all of the time and intense effort that we all put into addressing the pandemic across the region. But, particularly, I think the work of the equity team at the agency reflects the moment that we're in, both internally for the staff at the agency, but then also for the residents that we serve across the region. And again, Patrice and Raul, your colleagues wrote nominations to just recognize your incredible work. It is incredibly heart-forward work. It is sometimes emotionally very difficult to do this work. And again, your colleagues really just wanted to take this opportunity to recognize your commitment and your dedication to the work that you have done to move this effort forward for the agency so that we can do more than talk the talk, that we can actually walk the walk in our racial equity work. And so I was so thrilled to have the opportunity to read those nominations and to participate in this process. And I'm so thrilled to be able to give these awards to you today. It's really wonderful.
And Mark is actually at MAPC's office, and he just went next door. He was having issues with his computer. So Mark, I believe you are unmuted, but you're at Holly's computer. Thank you, Holly, for sharing. Mark, do you want to say something at this time?
He can't unmute, I don't think. Hold on one sec. I think we might be able to fix that.
Okay.
You should be able to unmute.
All right, yes.
Ah, there you are. He is not Holly Lewis.
I have turned into the HR manager. It's really the most important job at the agency anyway. Well, I'm sure that Lizzie eloquently spoke about all three of the candidates. There's probably not much I can add. I absolutely love working with all three of you. I deeply appreciate your commitment to the agency and the region. And I deeply appreciate the fact that every day you come into the office, whether it's real or virtual, and try and make the region a better place in so many ways. I will have to say specifically that the person I work most closely with is Patrice. She is my rock and probably puts up with a lot from her crazy boss. And it is unusual in many settings in America, not only in corporate America, but in government, for the person who sits at the front desk to also become a dramatic leader on the substantive work of the agency. But it is not that unusual at MAPC, actually. And it is certainly the case in regard to Patrice. Raul and I get to work together on so many economic development activities. Just yesterday, we spent a lot of the day working really hard to get another fabulous application for funding into the EDA. So we'll be able to continue our work. And Amy, who happens to be the staff person who lives closest to me, has been doing stellar work at the agency to make the region safer and fairer, to help young people who are facing violence, to address the opioid addiction, and to prepare us and protect us in the case of terrorist incidents for the last 14 years. She has said, and I'm sure she'll say today, she never expected her internship to turn into this career, but we're very blessed that it did. So I'm going to stop, and I think they may have a few words. Start with Amy. Someone will probably try. There she goes.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you so much for this recognition. It means so much to me. As Mark mentioned, I did start my career at MAPC as an intern. I was in our government affairs department, and I was lucky enough to be hired by Joel Barrera, who was our former deputy director. He took the time to take me under his wing, and through his mentorship, as well as through Rebecca Davis and Mark Fine's mentorship, I've grown into the position that I hold today. So I just want to thank them for all of their guidance and help. And, I take great pride in the work that our team does. I feel like what we do is we work to ensure that our first responders and healthcare professionals, that they have the tools to be able to do their job better. And I'm lucky to say that I learn from all of them every day as the wonderful team that we have in the Municipal Collaboration Department. Everyone that works at MAPC, we know that Mark Drayson, you've created such a great working environment, which is why I've been here for 14 years. And so I just want to say thank you for that. because your leadership is what enables us to carry out all the work that everyone does here at the agency. So again, thank you very much. I really do appreciate this.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Amy.
Can everyone hear me? Yep, great. Well, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate those kind words. I mean, if you had told me as recently as 10 years ago that the young boy who grew up on the US-Mexico border in El Paso, Texas would receive this award from such a prestigious organization like MAPC in the Boston metropolitan area, a place I could have only dreamed of being, I wouldn't have believed you. And my grandmother, who raised me since birth, and who sadly passed away in 2015, wouldn't have believed that I would want to live in a place that was as cold as Boston. I could picture her saying, ¿por qué quieres vivir en un lugar tan frío? and being very, very concerned and probably calling me every day. But be that as it may, to think that I could have done all this while sticking to my values, you know, my belief in equity as an institution, from racial equity, economic equity, and equity of accessibility, and to want to live in a world where those who are most in need and who have experienced the most distress and trauma in this world are always taken care of, and to live in a just society, I'm just eternally grateful to consider this my life's work. So I would like to thank the equity team for their support, the economic development team, and MAPC staff, and Matt Gonzalez, who's here today, for supporting me in all this. Thank you.
And Patrice, thank you, Raul.
All right, good morning, y'all. I wanted to say first, thank you for this award, and I really hope to live up to like the honor of this award. And yeah, let's continue the great work. Like, can I just give a high five to like Raul and Amy? There we go. All right, I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Lizzie, thank you very much for filling in for me during the Zoom emergency that just happened in the other room. I don't know why. I'll turn it back over. I think I'm turning it over to Lizzie, actually, for purposes of moderating the panel of 4 new mayors that we are very pleased to have joined us here today. And I'm going to go back into the other room and try and get back on my machine.
Actually, Mark, before you go, you are scheduled to just offer a few comments in advance of this panel, if you want to do that from right where you're sitting.
Fine.
So we can get things set up.
All right, we'll ad lib. Thank you.
Yes.
So I do want to thank Mayor Wu, Mayor Ballantyne, Mayor Verga, and Mayor Nicholson for joining us. They are all new to their jobs. This has become a little bit of a tradition at MAPC. Every few years or so, we do a panel with the new mayors. This year, because of timing, we have the opportunity for them to have been in office for a little while, and Mayor Wu just a little bit more time because she ascended to her position in November. And we're interested in learning from them about some of the challenges that they found during the first 100 days and the steps that they are taking to begin to address them. Obviously, COVID and Omicron have been on everyone's mind, and that has been an issue for all of them in their communities. But while that may capture the newspaper headlines, all the other activities of running a city go on, and the same demands continue going into the future. And I know that they've all been trying to address them simultaneously. In addition to that, they all have dreams that they ran for office to accomplish. And having been in for 60 or 90 days, you can just begin to get a sense of what some of those most important dreams are, and maybe a little bit of the pathway that you're going to follow to try and reach them. And so we're interested in hearing about all of that. Kasha Hart, on our staff, who works with Lizzie, has helped to devise some excellent questions to guide us. But mainly, we just want to hear from the mayors about what they've seen in the last few months and what they think the future holds. And we want to wish them a hearty good luck and always be at their disposal if we can assist them in their efforts. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lizzie.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think we are getting set up for this panel, and we're just about to spotlight the mayors who have joined us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lizzie Wyan. I'm one of the new deputy executive directors at MAPC, overseeing our public affairs and advocacy work. I am so excited to work with these new mayors in our region. It is just an incredible group of leaders who are just going to do amazing things in the MAPC region, and I'm very excited to have them today. I think we have everybody with us, and we do have bios for all of you, but I'm actually going to skip that part because I feel like the 150 plus people who are in this Zoom room with us are not interested in hearing your bios, and it's just enough to say that you're all spectacular. So we're going to move into questions, and I'm going to go ahead and start. So kicking us off right away, you all came into these offices with really bold ideas about the future of your communities and what that could look like. Now that you're all a few months in and obviously experts at running your communities, we'd love to hear a little bit about what it would be like, what it was like to sort of move from that campaign, the vision and goals that you're articulating during a campaign, into implementation, into the reality. And we'd love to hear one example of an action that you've taken that you feel like has really set your administration up for success. And I would love to start this with Mayor Wu.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so sorry we're running late from a ribbon cutting, so I'm in transit for a little, and we'll switch to a more stable view soon. But I'm so honored to be here with my colleagues and with so many who care and have been involved with good government across the Commonwealth. It's certainly been a whirlwind for me. We're just past our 100-day mark now, and in some ways, the most surprising part was how unsurprising a lot of the job is. That we and the team are quite familiar with the issues at hand and what plans and vision we had been building from community conversations over many years. Omicron threw a little bit of a wrench into the prioritization, I would say, of and the phasing of how everything needed to unfold, just because it was such an unpredictable surge, and as we were headed into the biggest spike that we had seen in cases, certainly at the federal, state, and local level, this is where the rubber meets the road, and much of our public health focus really came into sharp relief. I would say, for me, the biggest goal is to shift Boston city government away from being reactive to the many urgent issues and fires that are metaphorical fires that are and literal fires that are popping up every single day, and instead to create space to respond immediately to those urgent issues and to be proactive about that larger vision. So that means both having a regular sub-cabinet structure where everyone is focused on the long-term goals, at least getting some regular time every week to check in and keep that conversation moving, even as we are responding to more urgent issues. And then in the urgent response, to try wherever possible to resist just putting a Band-Aid on something to move on, and instead think about what immediate action could be taken that actually would align with and pave a pathway for that longer term systems change as well. So I like to bring up our work around Mass and Cass, the epicenter of Boston's substance use and mental health and homelessness crises, and to really say we need to do something immediately because the snow is coming. Has been 7 years now of absolutely unsafe conditions for all involved, but to do so in a way that was systems changing and transformational, creating the housing, taking a pause and creating housing and low threshold supports and medical wraparound services so that we could start the next phase in a different place than we had been over these last 7 years.
Thank you so much, Mayor. It's very exciting to hear your thinking on these things. We're actually going to move north to Mayor Nicholson from the city of Lynn.
Thank you so much, and thank you to MAPC for the invitation to join, and all of you being here, and to my colleagues. I'm so excited to be talking with you today. So, in terms of translating from the campaign to governing, one of our big themes on the campaign was the goal that we had for growth for the city, but growth that was inclusive, that it benefited the whole community and didn't leave folks behind. And I think so far that theme has translated really, really well to governing. I think a lot of the people in the city are excited about growth and want to move forward together and really care about doing that deliberately and inclusively. And so I think we found that goal has been met receptively once we've been in office. I think a action that we've taken that's a good example of that theme is one of the first things we did was try to address what had been a little bit of a disparate process for new development by getting all the city on the same page in sort of our internal review of new proposals, with the goal of really being able to fully utilize some of the city's expertise in different departments, from the buildings division, the planning department, our economic development folks, but also to have an organized process for developers to make things easier, encourage growth, and at the same time be able to give feedback early on in the process so that we can be really clear about the community benefits that we expect for new development, so that we are having that opportunity to make sure that we're encouraging the growth, and we're encouraging that growth is inclusive. So that was something that we kicked off right away, and we couldn't have done it without the support of the city council. And so that has been something that I think we've really prioritized is that relationship with the legislature, so that we can all get on the same page and build on that theme of inclusive growth.
Excellent. We love to hear that. We'll go back down towards our inner core region with Mayor Ballantyne from the city of Somerville.
Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here with you all and my colleagues in government. When I ran, my vision, and as we certainly talked about a lot in my campaign, is an inclusive, equitable Somerville where we can all thrive together. So, how do you take that campaign vision and turn that into goals? I mean, I would say we're 60 days in. We still have a few days to go to hit the milestone that Mayor Wu did yesterday, or the day before. I think it was yesterday. But our agenda for moving forward, or I should say mine, is hiring the staff. It's just really sort of the basic, hiring the staff that or promoting or making shifts to the staff that can really help move that agenda forward. And the vision has, at least for the first 100 days, moved into 7 key priority areas, which was responding to COVID and the ongoing recovery. It is putting in initiatives where we can make progress on equity, inclusion, and social justice. It's dealing with affordability, environment and sustainability, and climate change, access and transparency, quality of life, and strengthening and supporting the city's workforce. So, we put at least 1 or 2 steps within all those categories that we could move forward, because we see that, and I certainly see that, as a way to move Somerville to be more inclusive and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ballantyne. That's great. And last but not least, Mayor Verga from Gloucester.
Sure. So thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be part of this panel, and hello to my colleagues. It's funny, when you're in the campaign mode, you have all these great visions, and then reality sets in. Mayor Wu mentioned the 4-letter word of snow a few minutes ago, and pretty much, I think we're in our 6th or 7th week here. just about every weekend we've had to deal with snow emergencies. So that kind of derails what your plan is when you're going in the morning. But the thing is to keep up the momentum and get past the snow and get back to the plan. So one of my pillars of the campaign was collaboration, and that's a big thing. I said during the campaign that no one person is governing alone. You need the team. I was fortunate that I came in and pretty much the majority of the management team was already in place, knew what they were doing, and they were helping me get up to speed. But one of the things that was lacking before I got here, and as a former school committee member and city councilor, I felt it was important to have that regular communication with those bodies. So I have regular meetings every other week with the school committee chair and vice chair and the city council president and vice president. So there's no surprises. That's what I told them when I set these up. We just want to keep the conversation going, so there's no surprise for any big issues. The other big thing we've been working on is we had dozens and dozens of vacancies on boards and commissions. And these are the people who are volunteering their time, countless hours, who are putting in all the grunt work to get things done throughout the city. So that's been one of the main objectives, is to fill those positions that were vacant, look carefully at who was getting appointed to boards and commissions. And I didn't have a litmus test for any of them, like, here are my political views, what are yours? It just looked at their capabilities, what they've done and what they're willing to do, and put them on. And I think we have a healthy set now. We're still have a few vacancies, but we're getting there. But again, the volunteerism is what keeps any city or town moving along, because there's just so much work to be done that cannot be done by paid staff. So moving ahead for success, that's pretty much it. Keeping that line of communication going and making sure that we're reaching out to our partners in our surrounding communities, other town managers, mayors, upstream to the legislature and to the federal government. And it's been pretty good so far. I think we've had a good team locally and beyond. And I look forward to working more closely with my colleagues here.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I should just note anecdotally, this is the third time in my years at MAPC that I have had the opportunity to do a new mayor's panel, and snow comes up every single time. It is one of the unifying aspects of municipal and regional work. So you are in good company, and we are absolutely here to help you when those emergencies arise. I should have also noted at the start of this panel that Mayor Sositsky from Framingham had a personal commitment. He could not move this morning, and he just sends his apologies that he couldn't join us. So I'm going to move into sort of our open questions. And I'd love to turn us a little bit to COVID. I think it is just an incredible testament to your commitment to public service that you ran for office during this totally unbelievable and unprecedented time. And you're in this role at this moment as we're moving from COVID to this moment of recovery. I think, when we look at COVID, it became very clear that the households across the region and across the Commonwealth and across the country that really suffered the most were the ones that actually were already suffering from deep inequities. I think a lot of times when we address these issues from a policy perspective, we really address them kind of one at a time. But COVID really required us to take a more cross-cutting approach to actually solving some of these issues and addressing these longstanding problems. I would love to hear your thinking about how we address some of these issues around housing, economic development, public health with some of these cross-cutting strategies. How are we connecting our housing challenges to our climate challenges? How are we connecting our workforce development issues better to our economic development issues? Would love to hear your thinking about how we work to move this forward. And anyone is welcome to jump in.
Well, I'll be first to jump in. So COVID obviously is still at the top of the agenda. It's not over. It's sort of in a little, what's the word? It's in remission right now, but we need to be prepared because we could be hit with that surprise again. For our city, we lost during the height of COVID, we lost our director of public health and our public health nurse. And so the city is now, we've refilled our public health director from the former assistant. We're about to hire an assistant director. We've got our public health nurse lined up. But it's been a tough for not just Gloucester, for every city and town in the country. So, and as a husband and father of nurses, it really was personal to me, seeing my wife and daughter go off to work every day, not knowing what they might bring home to me or the grandkids or my parents. So where we go from here, be vigilant. I think that COVID became a political issue for all the wrong reasons. Science is science. It's not up for interpretation. Masks work, vaccines work. So it's a matter of trying to find that balance with your constituents to understand that when mandates are put in place, and I think Mayor Wu knows this better than anybody, it's for the greater good. As far as affordable housing, I mean, that's a tough nut to crack. One thing, all 6 of us who ran for mayor this year in Gloucester all said if it was an easy thing to do, it would have been, resolved. We've just reconstituted our Affordable Housing Trust and dedicated a steady stream of funding to the Affordable Housing Trust to try to, create opportunities for people who really need the help. Gloucester, like many of the communities who are represented here, is the housing prices are just insane. As a former real estate agent, I know firsthand. So it's a matter of just having an open mind and listening to people and trying to do the best you can and to take advantage of government funding where it's available. And again, what I mentioned earlier about the partnerships, knowing what we can do regionally to have better outcomes.
Thanks, Mayor. Anyone else want to chime in?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a great observation in terms of the importance of those kind of cross-cutting strategies. And I think, for starters, I think we have an ambitious agenda, and that's pushing on a lot of issues. And to do multiple issues at once just shows that they're all interrelated, and you making progress on one is setting us up to make progress on the other. One of those is one you mentioned with workforce development. And I think that's really important for us if we see this economic opportunity in Lynn, which we do and which we're really excited about, to make sure that our residents are getting the skills that they will need to participate in that. And we actually submitted a application to the MAPC's Technical Assistance Program to help with the strategy for workforce development. So we're optimistic there. But I think that's really important because it's cross-sectoral. Obviously, K through 12, higher education, very important in preparing people to work. We have private nonprofits that do adult education, agencies that are looking at this and tasked with this, Mass Hire and the Workforce Investment Board, and the private sector that is really struggling to find folks with the right skills and who want to be at the table and want to be helpful. So we think that there's a real opportunity for the city to play that convening role and that strategic role on workforce development. And another one that I think is important, you mentioned the sort of the role that COVID plays in exposing the historical inequities and how these issues interrelate is, wanting the people who are working on addressing these issues at City Hall to reflect the diversity of the community. So people who are of the community and have experienced these struggles themselves. And I think bringing that kind of diversity and focus on diversity to City Hall is definitely a goal. It's one that the previous administration had made some really great progress on, and that we're excited to continue. We tried to run a really open process for the hiring for our office this winter during the transition, and also prioritize making some appointments in the early days to key boards and commissions with a lot of vacancies, and really prioritized diversity there.
That's great. Thank you, Mayor. I love the plug for DLTA. Obviously, folks should obviously get their applications in. We're eager to help.
So I'd like to chime in here. Equity is, for me and for my administration, to be something that it can't be a buzzword. So, COVID response, every question that is asked is, how do we get it to the people who most need it? Who do we connect to? And I will say we've built a framework of connection and collaboration, so we know who those people are, so we can make sure that they got the face masks, that we went to the locations because if traveling to get vaccines was a difficulty, we made sure that they there was opportunity to do it on site or in neighborhoods where people could walk to get the vaccines. You asked for examples, of, how we connect and make sure that we keep our focus on the people who have not been able to be as well resourced or as connected as other. And, in Somerville, and certainly something that I worked on, it is you can use a zoning tool, on affordable housing. So, I worked on a project that was it's still 6 years in the making, but it was the governor put it out as an opportunity to rebuild decrumbling affordable housing in our city. So it's the Clarendon Hill public housing on North Street, Powder House Boulevard corner, and Alewife Brook. And as a city councilor, I strongly advocated for the highest and the most stringent stools on trying to encourage LEED Platinum. And so in that particular site, very long story, short way, that we have new affordable housing that is going to be LEED Platinum certifiable. It's going to be fossil fuel free. How did we do that? We used a zoning tool and incentives. And obviously, when you ask many of the, I would say, consultants that work on that, I said, what stops something from moving forward like this? And they said, well, we really think it's lack of political will. So I will continue to use this office to make sure that we are implementing strategies and using all the tools possible so the intended impact really goes to where it needs to be. But, I just want to, finally say, but guess what? It gets messy. If you want to include everybody, and I believe in inclusive leadership, it gets messy. But if you work on trying to get people together, at the end of the day, you get buy-in, you get shared purpose, and you get much more enthusiasm. So I'm up for the task of it getting a little messy so that the results are where we intended them to be. Thanks.
I'll echo everything that has been said, and in the very eloquent remarks, just add, I think for me, seeing how we have had to manage COVID and the lessons now in the politicization that's been referenced, and the division that we feel at the national level spilling over into local governments. At the end of the day, nothing new came out of COVID, right? That the inequities that we have seen deepen were already the ones that community members and community leaders have been advocating to close and to address for many, many generations. And so I hope that what we get out of COVID is a new way of communicating and building trust with our communities that okay, I'll go back to Mayor Verga's four-letter word, right? When there's a snow emergency, everybody is truly in it together, right? We all, at least in Boston, the space savers go out. There's an understanding that you can't park in certain places because we need to be able to clear snow to the curb for the safety of everyone. You have to shovel in front of your sidewalk. There's a set of things that everybody knows we all have to do to keep each other safe. The pandemic was the same concept, but stretching it out over 2+ years has led to this point of exhaustion where people are saying now, well, why can't we be done and never look back? Shouldn't the 2-day snow emergency, however many week public health emergency be done now so I can just return to not having to think about it? And the many ways in which we will continue to live with COVID are forcing us to have to build a new way of talking about it, of what we're trying to do is set up metrics so that there's more transparency and involvement in our decision making, so that people don't feel like we're lurching from one emergency to another, but being prepared for the world as it is unfolding in front of us. That's a world where we are deeply connected to the well-being and the health and stability of each one of our communities. That is a world where our issues are interconnected as well, that you can't tell it. If you told a family, would you rather have housing or food or health? I mean, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, and to demonstrate that, in fact, the actions that we take towards these big picture goals, in fact, are advancing progress on all of these fronts. And we can choose the types of actions that do that. And then I think at the end of the day, it is about shifting our frame of thinking away from this us versus them. Right? We've seen a lot during COVID and even yesterday at the State of the Union with the reception between different parties. There's a lot of, well, I don't trust that the government telling me this is, I should be in control of my own body. I'm going to fight the government on this and that. If we can get to the point where it's all of us against the challenges that are ahead of us, all of us against COVID, all of us against the housing crisis, the climate crisis, that's when we will be able to really move and take on those bold actions that will affect all of us into the future.
Yep, I think that's, I feel like all of that is resonating with all of you, the idea that we all need to be rowing our boat in the same direction, and that honestly takes all of us. And we obviously really appreciate that. I want to turn and talk a little bit more deeply about public health and the pandemic in particular. I think, one of the things that I feel like that we saw was that our public health professionals in our communities really, bore the brunt of a lot of the aspects of the pandemic and dealing with it. And obviously it was a pretty burdened system. Even before the pandemic, our public health professionals wear a lot of hats, which I think is unusual when you look at our sister regions across the country. And I'm wondering if you could talk about some of the lessons that you learned about how we can strengthen public health in our cities and how we can actually think about this on a regional and statewide level.
Well, no one's jumping in, so I'll pick it up. Yeah, it's definitely, well, as I alluded to before, I mean, one of the biggest problems was COVID equaled politics, and that's the first battle we have there, is just trying to get people back to, this isn't about left or right. It's not about red or blue. It's about life or death. And if we want to get past COVID, we have to understand that we are all in it together. As cliche as that sounds, we are all in it together. And we have to understand that masks are there for a purpose. Vaccines are there for a purpose. I don't know how we come out of this, because the political, like it was just alluded to at the political scene at the State of the Union, I don't know if we're ever going to recover from that. It's become, people go off to their silos. They're in federal government especially, they're together in the room to vote or to argue, then they go their separate ways. You don't see cross-party hangouts at the bar to have a beer to chat after. So that's the first battle we have to somehow win, is to get people to understand that this isn't about philosophy. This is about science and how are we going to improve and what are we going to do to be ready for the next spike or the next, forget the next variant, the next big thing that's going to come along. Public health, what this taught us is, we weren't prepared, but now we sort of know how to be prepared. But if we're still going to be dealing with that pushback, that it's like to Mayor Wu's point, it's my body, you can't tell me what to do. We're just not going to achieve the success that we're going to have to, as I said, back to life and death. So I wish I had an easy answer for that one, but instead of the doom and gloom, but people have to really understand it's what's for the common good, to make us get past this horrible time that we're in.
Mm-hmm. So if I could chime in here, I would say, for the city of Somerville being, in our 8th week in office, what I saw, so I was 8 years a city councilor, but what I've seen, and certainly what we've worked on, is there've been multiple departments that have come together to address the needs. Somerville is big enough yet small enough that, I know that I went out and walked and talked to people, but made sure that the communities that were most effective were reached out to. What are your needs? What is it in the spring or in the summer or in the fall? So it's connecting, in Somerville with the faith-based organizations. It's really, what we learned also is, we have a school district that's, just under 5,000. 500 children did not have the opportunity to be connected to the internet. So all of a sudden you had everybody trying to work together to make sure that they had laptops so they could, continue to learn during the pandemic. And many other people take it for granted that they can just download on their phone and they could have that access. So that then what it requires is it requires a little bit more effort. It requires a lot more effort and more time to make sure that everybody is included. We are also, for our city, we are in the search of a new Health and Human Service Director. We have a lot of good resumes, so we're hoping to move forward on something through, but we're in transition. And we also learned that there are gaps regionally and through the federal government. So I would say for this point in time, we are still trying to mobilize and make sure that we're connecting to everybody here in Somerville. And we're also trying to see what we can do and strategies we can work on and collaborations we can make at the state or with MAPC or with our federal government partners too. So I would say we are a work in progress and we just want to make everything better. And, we are also, running the risk of people burning out. So that's why, as part of my 100-day agenda, that there was a focus in on the people that are here. So we can figure out, how to make sure people stay safe, but also continue to deliver services.
I was just going to add that, I think the communications is really important, especially around public health. And the reality is that we do live in a relatively divided time where the experience of different communities let me put it this way, in a city, in a region that is the mecca of healthcare and life sciences and produced one of the life-saving vaccines that the entire world is using, we still see barriers, especially for Black and Brown communities, especially for low-income residents. And the more that we can take policy directly to connect it directly to the real lives of our residents, whether that is seniors, as has been lifted up in the chat, and a lot of support that's needed there in terms of housing prices going up and aging in place, or working parents and what it means to have the opportunity right now to invest federal funds to make a difference in closing the racial wealth gap and addressing the systemic challenges that were here long before COVID. But we do need to get beyond the politics of it. And so I've been trying to work with our Boston Public Health Commission about how we can specifically convene some voices and thoughts about how we can earn that trust back and have that credibility. I think often with public health, you see the discourse is rather split, where the doctors and public health professionals who are talking about vaccines or the effectiveness, they're appropriately measured in their comments, right? We know the effectiveness is this, with several disclosures that how scientists and lawyers and everyone, frame things. And then on the other side, you'll just get a clear, these vaccines, XYZ harm, no disclosures, misinformation. And how do we balance that when we are trying to make sure that we're reaching people with life-saving messages, but going up against so much misinformation, so much stress that has been concentrated over 2 years. I do believe mental health is a big piece of this. And so one of the priorities of our city moving forward will be to really elevate mental health as a citywide endeavor. And we're hiring for a chief behavioral health officer who will work hand in hand with Dr. Ojukutu and make sure that along the spectrum from young people in our schools to crisis response calls coming in from law enforcement to seniors who have been isolated in their homes and working parents, everyone in between, that we can start to get at some of that holistic way of bringing people together in conversation. It's not always going to be quite difficult conversations often, but to at least have the baselines where we can be speaking from the same set of facts and the same set of realities, which includes elevating the stories of how our policies impact people's day-to-day lives.
Absolutely agree with all that's been said. I think very much captures what we're thinking about here. I think, tactically from my perspective as well, my predecessor was in office for the bulk of this so far, and I know had done a tremendous job in his team, and we're lucky to have him. And one of the things that he found really helpful, that has been helpful to me so far in terms of lessons learned and things we can carry forward, is just the importance of the regional collaboration and having one another in touch and mechanisms like this through MAPC for us to be working together and know what we're doing and sharing best practices, because these are regional issues, obviously. I mean, in this case, it's a global issue, but the response has to be regional. I think that's really important. And then, from the public health perspective, I think recognizing that this is a really important capability that local governments need to have, and thinking about where that goes from here. Totally agree that COVID's in remission and that we're going to continue to be really deliberate about preparing, for the next potential wave, but also thinking about what are the other public health issues that we confront. And, to the point earlier, those issues are cross-section. The housing is a public health issue and some of the living conditions that people have. And certainly the mental health crisis and thinking about ways to meet people's needs for behavioral health. It starts in the schools and what we're doing in K through 12 education. So these issues interrelate, and public health has a really important role to play in all of them. And just really tactically, from one of the things that we're doing is that we've grown the public health capability is giving them more resources and more space. We're working on having a more sort of specific spot in the community where that work happens that can be community facing, where people can come. This idea that now that we have it, how can we use it? The expanded scope and capabilities of the public health function.
Thank you for that, Mayors. I think we definitely saw, that interconnected piece around sort of the role that public health plays at the center of everything is something that I feel like we are starting to really center in our own work at MAPC. And I love hearing about how all of you are thinking about this and how you're supporting your own public health teams. And then, I'll note from the policy side of things, I think there's a lot of interesting pieces of legislation moving in the State House, specifically to address mental health issues and youth mental health issues. And we are very eager to kind of continue and support that dialogue as it's happening on Beacon Hill. I want to turn us to ARPA and recovery, because we spent a long time talking about COVID, and it was so much better when we got the opportunity to talk about how we were going to spend millions in federal dollars to actually address recovery. So is a much better topic to start talking about. So I'd love to hear how you are thinking about your ARPA dollars at the local level. We'd love to hear a strategy that you're using to direct ARPA expenditures, particularly to lift up some of the individuals that were most deeply affected by the pandemic, as we've discussed a lot today.
Thanks. I'll start off. It's equity. You know, that's got to be at the bottom line of everything. For us here in Somerville, we pride ourselves in being a progressive city. So we, as was said previously, this is a time to pause. This is a time that the national, since it's been shown through COVID where those gaps and inequities are. Certainly for me, it's not the right thing to do is to make sure that we're really delivering on the equity and making sure that we know who is most affected, and certainly in our city, and where to target it. So we have earmarked $6 million already for childcare. We've try to also support full-time care for infancy through preschool and out-of-school time through 5th grade. We've been emphasizing the continuity of families by increasing the number of available slots each year. Rental assistance has been a huge thing for us. Our Office of Housing Stability will contract with local organization and has to provide flexible rental assistance to the most vulnerable neighbors. COVID has had, a deep and inequitable impact, and the programs that help keep our community together and prevent displacement are, of the foremost. Many times when I talk to people in Somerville and they say to me, well, this is a really diverse city. And then I ask, well, what is your definition of diverse, and what do you know about the demographics here? Not in a confrontational way. They're sort of open-ended questions. And when I share with people that, we're a community 70% white, but our public school system is sort of flipped, and we're nearly 70% children of color, over 60% free and reduced lunches. And they pause and they say, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. And why is that important? It is that as we're having this public dialogue, and sometimes a very divisive atmosphere, that, I feel in my role, it's important to remind people of who lives here and how we can make connections for those who are most vulnerable. So that's the approach that we've taken on ARPA also. Thank you.
In some ways, I would turn this question around as an ask for recommendations. There are many folks on this call who have much more experience. I see Mayor Driscoll on here, who's already been such a friend and mentor. Where it feels like we have a once in a generation opportunity to get this right. And where I am so far, not having gotten all the way there to figure it out, needing much more advice, is that because it's going to be one time, I want us to resist the urge to cut 10,000 ribbons and have a bunch of photo ops, and really focus on what transformational change looks like, whether that is in making it visible so someone can see to believe, right? Using a portion of it on our free bus pilot to give a sense of what this means and how it feels for residents, or a large chunk that we have committed to housing creation and housing stability in particular, both maintaining and creating new affordable units, but also boosting home ownership to close a racial wealth gap. And so beyond that, I think we're thinking broadly around housing and climate and infrastructure as the ways that we'll use it. But I would leave it more as I welcome your suggestions, especially for folks who have been through this kind of situation before.
Yeah, I think that's, oh, go ahead.
No, Jared, you go ahead.
Okay. No, I think it's a great idea, Mayor Wood, and so I'm also open to suggestions. And, I think that's actually, one of the ways we're doing this is trying to hear from the community. So we got 75 million. The last administration made, I think, a really great decision to put about 14 million into city buildings, HVAC improvements, which is helpful for COVID and also just, an important capital investment. And then right when we took office, we, working with the city council, put aside some money for some of the urgent issues that we're facing us this winter, for COVID response and getting tests, and also for small business grants that have been impacted by the Omicron variant, hoping that we give some of those businesses an opportunity to sort of make it to the spring when the variant subsided. So those weren't decisions we made right away, but for the vast majority of it, for those 58 million, we're trying to lead a community input process. And we've tried to make that accessible by kind of breaking it down and asking people first, what are the categories that people are interested in investing in? And have been really deliberate about trying to make that accessible. So the city's diversity, equity, and inclusion officer actually put together a project to hire interpreters in some of the most common languages spoken in Lynn, Spanish, Portuguese, Khmer, and Arabic have been hired so far. And so that we can do that outreach in folks' native languages to try to make that inclusive. And then when we get the feedback from the categories, to then have another level of input, which is sort of more project specific, so that we're not just asking the community, how should we spend $58 million, but breaking down the question so that people can actually feel comfortable weighing in and try to meet people where they're at. And that so far has been Zoom meetings, and the in-person meetings hopefully are starting soon. We want to, it is one-time money. So there's obviously restrictions exactly how it's spent. So we want to try to communicate that and get people's input so that we make the right decisions that can have that once in a generation impact.
Yeah. So the ARPA money was awarded under the previous administration, and unfortunately they didn't begin the process of how to distribute it. But fortunately, they didn't start the process of how to distribute it. So we're not coming in locked into anything. So what our plan is to hold listening posts now that the mask mandates have been lifted, and we can start to meet in person. We hope to have several hybrid meetings throughout our 5 wards to get the input from people to see what their priorities are. One thing is Gloucester's 400th anniversary is next year. And as such, we have a very, very, very old infrastructure. Did I mention it's very old? And so we have a lot of things that aren't very sexy that have to be done, like sewer plant updates, water and sewer lines in the ground. So ideally, I want to not have to spend every dime of ARPA and the infrastructure money on the sewer plant, and find ways that we still spend some portion of it. We got $23 million in ARPA, spend some of it to help out with affordable housing, other priorities throughout the city. But the big thing is to do the outreach to see what those priorities are to the people throughout the city of Gloucester.
Thank you all so much for that. I should say, I've been in policy and politics just long enough to know that this level of outreach and community engagement from our cities and towns to our residents is really unusual and inspiring, and something that we love to see. And I think, Mayor Verga, to your point that sometimes we have to make these unsexy investments so that we can actually make sure that our infrastructure is strong enough so we can do some of these big transformative things. We are obviously very deeply aware of that, and always eager to partner on some of those ways that we can get some of the statewide investments so that you guys can do the really big transformative things. I want to have one last closing question for you. This will be kind of the quick hit question. MAPC for the past couple of years, but even in many years for the before times, has been honored to convene tables of mayors and managers together to work closely and share best practices and ideas for our communities and for the region. I would love to just hear one quick idea, something you're really excited about advancing at the local or regional level within the next couple of months in your terms. And we can do it round robin style. I'll go in opposite order of the way I started. So we're actually going to start with you, Mayor Verga.
Well, one of the things, again, this one that's not very exciting and sexy, is we have issues with our sewer plant, and our neighbors in the surrounding towns have issues with their sewer infrastructure. So we're in early communications to see what we can do on a regional approach. there's no sense in all 4 of our communities trying to solve it on their own. So that's like my current regional goal is that locally it's more of efficiencies trying to drag the city into the 21st century. You know, something as simple as, it wasn't my idea, I'm inheriting it, but I'm glad it's here, is this summer will be the first year we have online registration for out of town visitors to visit our beaches. So hopefully that'll cut down on the complete gridlock we have from 128 all the way to East Gloucester and West Gloucester. Beach stickers for the locals, having that done online. So there's been this issue, credit card purchases, online purchases have not been the thing for the city. But again, as I mentioned, this is the 21st century and we are not going to be the first city to do it. So I definitely don't want us to be the last city to do it. So those are the kinds of things I'm looking at, is how to be more efficient locally with some of those things that benefit our local community, and then working with our regional partners, our local Cape Ann partners, to find solutions that for those not so sexy items that we all depend on day to day.
That's great. I can't wait to have our next council meeting at a beach in Gloucester. That sounds awesome. I'm going to turn to Mayor Ballantyne.
Thank you. The things that I'm most excited about is, working on equity. I really want equity not to be a buzzword. I know our community wants that. They value that. That intersects with climate, that intersects with housing, that intersects with transportation. And this is a time that we can just be really deliberate and thoughtful, because I will say what I hear from our community is they do want structural change. So trying to implement that structural change, coming up with strategies to do that is something I'm really excited about. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Mayor Nicholson.
Thank you. Yeah, so regional issue that I'm excited about is definitely the electrification of the environmental justice corridor. The North Shore has been far too long left out of the transportation picture. There's an urgent need for rapid transit on the North Shore. I'd love to see the Blue Line, but I think the electrification of the environmental justice corridor up to Beverly with infill stations along the way is imperative, and exactly the kind of cross-cutting solutions that we've been talking about that speak to housing, workforce development, environmental justice, climate change, to get more people on the rail in a way that really meets the needs of everyday folks that live along the environmental justice corridor. And a local initiative, we're pushing to adopt inclusionary zoning for the city as a way to be excited about the development that we're having, encourage that, but also make sure that it includes the people of Lynn and creates more opportunities for affordable housing.
That's great. I will say, Mayor Nicholson, you're going to get a lot of love in the chat from my friends, the transit nerd community that comes to our MAPC meetings on that electrification piece.
We need that help.
We are with you. Mayor Wu, you close us out.
I'll stay on the transportation train and put bus service forward. I think there's a huge opportunity with the MBTA footprint to keep expanding access and keep pushing for, especially the places where we are seeing the potential for dedicated bus lanes and bike lanes, which cut off across the municipal borders, for us to be much more closely aligned there and to work on access across the bus routes, that some of our most heavily used routes cut across multiple municipalities. And then on the legislative side, we're making another push for the transfer fee. So I know this is something that several communities have lifted up as well. We have seen the City Council, knock on wood, we'll take this up today at our meeting in an hour and take it back up to the State House for the chance to generate much needed resources for affordable housing and housing stability.
Well, you are all singing our song. We love hearing these ideas, and we are so eager to work with you on all of them. I want to thank you all so much for your time this morning, for your incredible dedication to your communities and to our region. And again, just thank you for your honesty and your wise words. And we are so looking forward to working with you on all of these initiatives. I am going to turn it over to our Executive Director, Mark Drazen, for a last word, and then we are just about ready to close out our meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark. And again, thank you all, Mayor, so much.
Did he drop off again?
Don't know. I don't see him.
Yes, okay.
Yes. All right, Erin, it's off to you.
Well, I'll personally thank all the mayors for coming today and sharing your wisdom. I am really excited to see what all of you will accomplish, even more so than you've already accomplished in your terms so far. And as we move into the future, I am so excited to hear what other communities are going to do as we move forward as well. And I want to thank the almost 200 people who came to our winter council meeting today. I think that having Zoom is great because it affords us the opportunity for reach and accessibility that maybe wasn't available to some before. And I guess at this time, I'm going to ask if there is any other business. And I'll ask Lizzie because she's the most senior person on this from MAPC currently on this call. Oh, wait, I see Holly Lewis, who is fake Mark. Mark, are you there? I just don't want to.
I am. I don't know if the mayors are still on or not. Are they?
And the real Holly, the mayors are still on, and the real Holly Lewis is also here. So thank you, Holly, for that. But Mark, closing comments?
Sure, I do. Sorry about that. I seem to have unexpectedly had internet difficulties in my office, which is usually pretty rock solid. So I apologize for that. And I want to thank all 4 mayors for being on. I would not be honest if I did not make a special thank you for my my own mayor and my neighbor, Michelle Wu, for joining us here today. I know how incredibly busy you are, and it's wonderful to have you, your leadership and your wisdom here. I wanted to say a couple of very quick things. One is on ARPA. A lot of people, including Mayor Wu, talked about the need to figure out the excellent ways to use this once in a generation opportunity. If any of you, either the mayors on this call or the many other people on the call from other cities and towns wish to work with us, we are available to work with you on our spending priorities in 2 different ways. The first is Emily and her team are ready to do community engagement activities as they assisted with in Somerville. And the second is substantively, how is it best to spend this money in ways that are going to have long-term impacts? You should know going in that we have an ideology on this issue, and that is that most ARPA funding should be spent on issues that will truly turn equity around. The last thing that I would say is about planning. You know, I like to say sometimes, occasionally, when I have a little bit of hubris in my mind, that next to Mayor Wu's BPDA, MAPC is the largest planning agency in Massachusetts. And we're proud of some of the things we've been able to accomplish. We're proud of our focus on engagement. We're proud of bringing equity and equality into every project. We're proud of the professional development that we provide to our staff. But I am remembering something that one of my professors said to me at MIT, which is, she asked, what is the planning profession? And the answer that she gave us was the planning profession is helping people to cut a path through the woods to achieve their dreams. And as such, it's not about housing, it's not about climate, it's not about workforce, it's about how all of those things work together, which is the point that Lizzie actually started with in her questions. And we not only hope that you'll come and work with us on those individual issues, we know that all of you are looking at your planning functions and trying to make them more about the future and less reactive, because the reality is that often our planning departments react to development proposals more than they plan for the future. And we are so eager and so ready to work with you to make those planning functions better, to help you and the people in your communities to cut a path through the woods to achieve your dreams. So with that, I just want to thank people for spending time with us here today and for your inspiring words, and I'll turn it back over to Erin.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it, and I echo everything you said. I just want to make a quick reminder for everyone on or watching in syndication, I guess, to please stay tuned for the Metro Common launch, which is expected to be in early May, and for the annual council meeting, which will be at the end of May. Hopefully, They will both be in person. Rumor has it that Gloucester Beach it may be available thanks to this meeting. But I really appreciate everyone for joining us today. And with that, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn. If you could do so in the chat, I would appreciate it. Jared Johnson moved to adjourn the meeting, and Josh from Natick seconded the motion. So if all the delegates could vote in the affirmative, or however you wish to vote in the chat at this time. I agree, Jared, fantastic meeting. Thank you all for those who contributed and made sure that this was a success. And it looks like motion passes. The meeting is adjourned a little overboard, but it's okay, 11:05 p.m. I hope you all stay safe and have a great day. Bye-bye.